mean, the good people of Texas, it may be a backward state politically, but the good people of Texas decided in 1979 that they wanted to make it a state holiday. It is a state holiday in Texas from 1980 to this day. So people are off in Texas celebrating the emancipation of black people in Texas. Now, don't get me wrong, Texas is a very profoundly racist state, just like I don't know, Connecticut. But this is what they decided to do. At least they have recognized this. I don't think the great people of New England have any gusto to do that right now. I wish they would, but I don't know. They don't want to have that conversation because of their own complicity in the maintenance of slavery and racism in America itself. All right. So, any questions for me so far? As I go along, just trying to lay out my groundwork here. And since that time, the celebration of Juneteenth continues in various states. And what it does is it serves as a time for black people to pause and reflect where we are as a community in the United States, right? What our status is. And it's in this spirit tonight, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the state of freedom, and equality and justice for blacks in the 21st century, and how we're working to ensure we secure the creation of what MLK called and what folks before him called the beloved community. And I believe in that work, and I've always worked that way throughout my whole life. As you can tell from my accent, I am a Southerner, and I am from Arkansas, yes. And I'm from Little Rock. So I grew up there, but I haven't been home in about 40 years. So, you know, my parents say, you know, what's going on, you know. Criminal justice system, let's talk about that, the status of black people when it comes to that. The criminal justice system, you know, that's horrendous, right? You know, it's pretty bad. I got something today, the other day, from the great state of Pennsylvania. Not Pennsylvania, I'm sorry, the great state of Florida. And in Florida, they're going the route that California went down, which has turned out to be the wrong route to go when it comes to mandatory sentencing laws, right? And that people have to serve time mandatory if they commit an act. So there's no minimum, there's only the maximum sentence. That's what you're going to serve if you get caught. Now what this has led to has been an unprecedented move to privatize prisons, because prisons are starting now to be overcrowded. They don't have the budget to build prisons, and so they're going to privatize it. And the two groups that are going after the privatization stuff is GEO Group and Correction Corporation of America. And they're the most heinous of the two, right? They do bad things to prisoners, believe me. They violate their rights all the time. So there's tremendous racial disparity in the criminal justice system, the penal system, and so forth, right, that exists. And what we mean by that, that's just kind of disparity when it comes to racial disparities, is there's a proportion of racial group within the control of the system that is greater than the proportion of such groups in the general population. When you look at the prison system in the United States, you see, we look at per 100,000 incarceration rates by race, you see, especially for males. For males, you got 456 whites per 100,000 incarcerated in prisons or jails. When you look at black males, it's 3,059. So the numbers are just tremendously high, and the issue is, how did we get there, right? How did these numbers get so disproportionately, I mean, it's outrageous, right? Outrageously high. And the causes of such disparities vary, and they may include things like, you hear this one, especially from people who are on the far right and so forth, is that there's a level of criminal activity that's in those communities. That's why they're all in jail, right? There's also the issue of law enforcement's emphasis on particular kinds of communities. I mean, I'm out in Windsor, Connecticut, and I rarely ever see a cop drive by. But I come in Hartford to Trinity, I see cops driving by every damn second, right? That's a tremendous difference. So law enforcement emphasis, but there's also legislative policies, right? And decisions that are going on to drive up these kinds of disparities between racial groups. Say, for instance, the crack cocaine kinds of differentiations that were outlawed recently by the federal courts that say that there was a tremendous disparity and it wasn't right. And the Justice Department under Eric Holder supported that. And right away, what they did with him the other day was, I'm like, how you gonna get a bunch of criminals gonna hold somebody in contempt? I don't understand that. It's amazing to me. I mean, and they don't even know what they hold them in contempt about. I don't know. But anyway, that's another story. All right, but so what you have then is these kinds of criminal justice practitioners who exercise a broad discretion in who goes to jail. And it's surely in a racist society that you're going to have people who have these conceptions of black males especially as being public enemy number one. All you got to do is just look at what happened at Trinity College just a few months ago. You know, I mean, they want to quickly blame the community, especially anybody who was black or brown, for beating the hell out of a kid who got beat up essentially because he did something untoward towards a young female in the sorority, and her sorority sisters and his fraternity brothers, you know, kicked his ass. But that didn't get out there, okay? And they're not talking because they all lowered up. So, you know, you're not gonna hear about that. So let's go a little bit further when it comes to disparity stuff. Okay. So what stands out? Okay, since the 1980s, the United States incarceration rates of these groups have increased exponentially, due in part to a rollback in and continuous rollback in the Fourth and Eighth Amendment rights of these individuals, of these groups of people. Right? The Fourth Amendment is the right of people against unreasonable searches and seizures without probable cause. Right? And the Eighth Amendment is that citizens have the right to be free from excessive bail and cruel and unusual punishment. Now, you know, you got 8-year-olds and 5-year-olds being let out of classrooms in handcuffs who are black and brown throughout the country. That feeds into this kind of feeding into the prison systems. You also know that in the state of Pennsylvania, at least in Philadelphia, there were judges who were working with the CCA and the GO group to funnel kids from the inner city to prisons and so forth. So you should also know about that. So, and then you got the school system, which is messed up, which I'll talk about a few if I have time. And how that also channels these kids into these prison systems so they can basically be exploited. Like let's go back to the general order. We don't stand for no idleness now. You can't collect at the military post. So we're gonna put you in prison and we're gonna give you 25 cents an hour or 75 cents an hour to produce some goods that we're gonna charge somebody a markup of 500 to 700% so we can make a profit. It's called the military prison complex, right? The military, no, I'm talking about the prison industrial complex. I'm thinking about the military industrial complex. That too is a thing. No. So yeah, that is true. So then you have, you know, like, let me give you some examples of this Fourth Amendment thing. I just give you some, but let's talk about the Gen 6 people, right? Remember that, 2006, when basically these kids were, they responded to white racism and noose hanging and stuff like that on trees, and they beat up this kid who they saw as somebody who was a threat to them, and the kid got, you know, suffered a concussion and multiple bruises. And so you got 6 black students, 6 black males who were basically charged with attempted murder and conspiracy. For responding to that, right? I mean, you know, they could have faced up to 100 years in jail for that, right? But we had this tremendous public outcry. You also have the New York City stop and frisk stuff. You all know about this. We had just a march the other day with NAACP, which I thought, okay, fine, it's nice. NAACP has a tendency to be very conservative. You know, you're walking down the street quiet. Hell, make some noise. Show you're pissed off. Hit some pots and pans like they do in Quebec or something, you know. But no, they wanted to keep it mute, say, you know, we're going to intimidate you with our menacing looks and stuff. Oh, okay, fine. Buy into that kind of racial stuff. But the fact is that that's what they did. They was going off against stop and frisk. You can get stopped in New York at any moment, especially if you're black and brown. Because basically it's about 80 or 90% of the stops are those folk, right? So you also have, when it comes to violation of Fourth Amendment rights, you have what just recently occurred. All the time you get this kind of police brutality, but it's really like this vigilante stuff that's going on, especially down in Florida with Trayvon Martin. What happened to him when this vigilante guy, what's his name, Zimmerman? He actually was walked away scot-free after killing this guy without any investigation into what occurred. You know, they bought his story of events and so forth. 5 minutes, okay. All right, so it wasn't, I mean, I'm not getting to anything. But anyway, so.
We can give you a couple minute extension if you need.
Okay, all right. So if it wasn't for a sustained kind of public outcry by the loudest and most real people in the black community, I mean, nothing would have came about with the Trayvon Martin thing. I mean, it had to be brought to the public light. It was months after he was killed that things came to light, right? That the regular corporate media picked it up and so forth. The Eighth Amendment, an example of that. When you look at the United States in 1970, there were 200,000 people in prison and in jail in the United States. Today in the United States, there's 2.1 million people in prison. That's a 500% increase in the past 30 years. A 500% increase. All of it relates back to, as a sociologist,